In my room, there's a small door leading to where the air conditioning unit is housed. This door has no locking mechanism whatsoever, so it wasn't uncommon to find it open by itself whenever swindled by a draft. It is impossible to close the door behind you once you get beyond it and enter the crawl space type area that it leads to. I have lived in this house for 5 years now, and for the first 4, I never gave the door a second thought. It wasn't until the 5th year until the door started making me feel unsettled. A few months ago I was home alone. I'm 17 and I live in the bonus room, which is why it is connected to the crawl space. I had been upstairs playing on my PlayStation when the house phone rang. Normally I would answer the one upstairs, but I had unplugged the charger and it had died. I sprinted downstairs to answer the phone. My 2 dogs who were up there with me were at my heels. I picked up the phone, 1-800 service number, of course. I let the dogs back out. I remember vaguely what happened. I opened the door, 3 beeps from the alarm system notified me, and then I closed it. Before going back upstairs, I went to the bathroom. Later, I heard the 3 beeps notifying me that the door had been opened. I assumed my parents had just gotten home, except I didn't hear any footsteps and there were no voices. I got out of the bathroom and checked all the doors. All locked except the back door, but my dogs wouldn't let a stranger near them without attacking them. I let them both in and locked the door. Maybe I just imagined it. I did have a pretty vivid imagination, and I do get a little paranoid when I'm home alone. It wasn't long after when I would wake up in the morning and the door would be wide open. Sure, it did that once or twice over my living there, so I could rationalize it, but it did still creep me out a bit. But recently, it's been open in the morning at least once every week. So I told my parents and they went out to get a latch for the door to keep it closed. For about 3 weeks the door never opened. Then one day I came home from school and the latch was lying on the ground next to the open door. That's around the time I started sleeping with a knife at my bedside. I put the latch on over and over again, but every time I let for more than a few hours, it would have fallen off again. I told them time and time again that the door was still opening. They blamed it on some cheap latch and told me I really should get over it. They told me I'm 18, so I would have to get over my fear of the dark eventually, except it wasn't the darkness I was afraid of. I was afraid of whoever was living in that crawl space. One day I went down for breakfast and my parents just both stared at me solemnly. I asked what's wrong. "We heard you last night," my father said sternly. "Heard me doing what? Snoring? I'm sorry, I just haven't been getting a lot of sleep late." "No, not snoring. We heard you rummaging through the kitchen last night. It didn't help that you were slamming cabinet doors at 3 in the morning, waking everybody up." He tried to say maybe I was sleepwalking again, but I hadn't done that in years. "Well, you're the only one who likes cherry coke, so unless it was the damn ghost in your crawl space, I don't know who else it could have been." Then he realized that he was about to be late. He then walked out the door, closing it behind him. 3 beeps. I didn't sleep much after that. Most nights I would have the TV on and just looked out the door. I still had school, so the latest I would stay up is about 4 in the morning, knowing that if I stayed up any later, the next day I would want to kill myself. But even then, I would sleep for 2 hours, and when I woke up, the door would be open, latch lying on the ground beside it. Eventually, the door would be open every morning. I decided it could no longer be a coincidence and I had to do something about it. That night came and 4 a.m. came around and I turned off my TV and laid there, waiting. About 30 minutes later the first push came, slow but strong. Then another push, then another, and on the 4th and most powerful push the latch fell to the ground and the door slowly opened. I waited, eyes squinted to mimic the look of sleep, his head poked out. Once the door was completely open, he made his way out, head first, using his arms to drag him through the opening. Once he pulled his entire body out, I could see the silhouette of what seemed to be a thin, hairless man. He lunged towards me once, propelling himself with his forearms. I could hear my heart beating. My breaths got louder and deeper, and I almost started weeping. His hairless head turned towards me. I could feel its glare burning through my skull. Taking quick, silent lunges towards me, I heard it make its way over to where I, quote-unquote, slept. My heart beat faster, and my breaths got even louder. That's when he got closer, facing the side of my face. My eyes were still closed, but I heard its breathing. Heavy, strained breathing. Soon he turned around and crawled on all fours back into the crawl space. I heard creaks and cracks as he made himself at home in the crawl space of our walls. Just when I thought it was safe to open my eyes, just slightly, I heard it rise from within the crawl space. The pitter-patter of his hands and feet against the wooden floor. I shut my eyelids as tightly as I could. It made its way back to the still open door. Then it made its way back to its home in the crevice. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, and when morning came, I didn't come out until my parents called me for school. More exhausted than fearful, I stumbled over with a flashlight and a knife to look into the crawl space. I didn't see anything, and I know they'd said the same thing, so I moved out and went to live with roommates because I knew they wouldn't believe me. But I also knew I couldn't stay in that room anymore. I have a phobia that goes by a few names. It's the fear of being watched. Whenever I see a doorway, a window, or virtually any surface that someone could hide behind, imagine a face peering out at me, staring. Imagine what I would do, what I could do. You will find out soon why I have this phobia. On to the story. I'll try my best to remember all the details, but I've repressed a lot of it. Around June of 2016, my mother and I were living in a small apartment. There was no basement or attic, obviously, but there was one tiny crawl space in the closet floor of my bedroom. I never looked into it. I suppose some people would be overwhelmed with the curiosity, but my mind had already imagined the worst scenarios. I decided to leave whatever dead bodies and ghosts that were down there for whoever rented after us. I lived there for a few peaceful months, until the noises started. It was nothing extreme, just the odd bump in the night and particularly scratching. My mother just brushed it off as rats in the wall. A week or two later, I'd already grown used to the noise. It became almost comforting in a way. After all, I never really liked the silence. That is, until I woke up one night to a different noise, eerily similar to the sound my closet made when I opened it. I peeked my eyes open and looked over, but I couldn't make out anything in the dark. I thought maybe I saw something move, but I was well aware that my mind plays tricks on me in the dark. There was only one way to find out, so I turned on my lamp. I expected to see a closet full of coats. What I saw was much, much worse. It was an eye. Not just an eye, but the entire half of someone's face, barely visible in the tiny crack that he opened. He didn't even react to being caught. No smile, no fear, just watching. My heart never beat faster than that night. I wished I did something, or anything at all. But I just stared back, frozen in time until I couldn't hold it in anymore. I began sobbing loudly. I think I tried to say something along the lines of, "What do you want?" but it was garbled in my crying. He opened the door more. I could see his entire body, which I won't describe as I spent 2 long years trying to forget that face. Shh. I lost my breath at that. Hearing him made it real. I couldn't pretend that this was just some fucked up hallucination anymore. At this point, I sat up and pressed my back against the wall. "It's okay, Jennifer." He said it so cheerfully. The creep knew my name. He knew my fucking name. That's when I got the courage to run outside, and my mom, still being half asleep when I called the police, thought I just imagined it. Of course, by the time the police got there, he was already long gone. All that was left of him was that damned crawl space, and I still never looked inside. Though, writing this, I kinda wish I did. Having some sort of proof of this would, I don't know, comfort me, maybe? At least you all would know I'm not crazy. Apparently he had been living in there. For how long, I don't know. But the officers who arrived on the scene said that there were tally marks inside the crawl space. I didn't want to know how many. I didn't want to know whether he was marking days or weeks. I just wanted to leave the fucking apartment. And we did. The police never found him. Not for certain. They thought they found a homeless man who matched his description, but he was apparently unresponsive. I've always thought that they didn't take it that seriously. They just thought he was a squatter, even after I told them that he knew my name. Since that night, he has been the face I always see whenever there's a door or closet. It's grown more distorted as time goes by, but I can always make out a part of his pursed lips, as if he's telling me to be quiet again, shushing me. It's gotten easier with time, but I don't think I'll ever be over this completely. Anyways, I guess we didn't actually have rats. I had been living on this farm since I was born. Nothing scary or creepy ever happened. It was just a plain old farm. 2 floors with a basement where we all kept our supplies for, farming stuff, like planting crops and all that. I was 14 by now, and I mostly sat in my room playing video games and browsing Reddit or watching Netflix, since my parents do most of the work around the house and the farm. Whenever I offered my help, they would just tell me to go back and play my games, or it's a hard job to do and I wouldn't be capable of doing it. But on this one day, when I was in my room playing Call of Duty Black Ops 4, my mom came into the room and asked me to help her get some of the boxes from the basement, which I thought was weird since my parents never asked me to do almost anything. My mom grabs 2 medium-sized boxes and goes to head upstairs. As I'm grabbing my boxes, I realize that there's only about 5 left in the basement, so I grab 2 boxes, same as my mom. But as I'm walking away, I hear a noise, kinda like a blunt object hitting a concrete ground. I quickly turned around in fear that there was something behind me, but nope, just boxes. I shrugged it off as my imagination pulling tricks on me. We finish with the supplies and I go back to my room to play more video games. In the morning, as my mom and dad are leaving to get more supplies, my mom asks me to bring up the rest of the boxes as they'll be using them when they get back. I go back for the last 3 boxes from yesterday. As I pick them up, I see a little hole in the wall, so I put the boxes down and went to check it out. I got in a prone position and crawled in there. I must have crawled like 10 feet. Then I stopped just ahead and turned left into a room, just around the corner. I see a faint light, like 2 glowing eyes, but barely glowing at all. As I'm looking, I realize something. Those eyes belong to a face. At this moment, I'm freaking out thinking about what to do as that thing is getting closer. I started to do some sort of reverse army crawl while looking behind me to see how close I am to the exit, but I turned back around and I see nothing. I quickly got out and ran upstairs. My parents had just gotten home and I ran over to my dad's truck, and between breaths I was trying to explain, but as soon as the words crawl space came out of my mouth, my dad's face became very, very mad. He just simply told me in a very stern voice never to go into the basement again. Fast forward about 6 years. I'm now 20 and on my own in my own house. I'm on my couch just sitting down when I remembered what happened 6 years ago in that crawl space. I texted my dad and asked him if he could explain what happened now that I'm older. He said that the farm was built on an old burial site, hence why they wouldn't let me go into the basement where strange things would happen the most. The weird stuff had eased up, so they thought maybe I could roam around more freely, but after my story they realized maybe that wasn't the case. Needless to say, I was very creeped out by this.